What's going on, guys? Lon here from Android Authority, and for many years Samsung was highly criticized for their build quality and heavy use of plastic, and each and every year we eagerly waited and hoped that that would all change. Well, with the Galaxy S6 Edge, that change is now, but it didn't just happen overnight. Over the last several months there was an evolution. It all started with the Galaxy Alpha, one of Samsung's first Android smartphones to feature the use of metal, but it was only along the frame. A few months later came the Galaxy Note 4 and Note Edge, which were essentially blown up Galaxy Alphas with beefier specs and an S Pen. More recently, Samsung released their A series, which were a bunch of low to mid-range phones, but they were the first crop of smartphones from Samsung to not feature a sliver of plastic, and that leads us to today. This is the Samsung Galaxy S6 Edge. The evolution is complete, and it may have taken longer than we anticipated, but you know what they say. Some of the best things in life are worth waiting for. While Samsung may have taken some inspiration from existing products, there's no denying that the S6 Edge is Samsung's most beautiful phone yet. Samsung has finally given us a phone that is fitting of the flagship title and the high price tag that comes with it. The S6 Edge features a metal frame with chamfered edges that sandwich between two pieces of Gorilla Glass 4, and in the hand it feels solid. The front and back glass features a translucent effect that gives the phone a very unique look, and when the light hits it just right, it can be very eye-catching. Although this is a new direction for Samsung, there are still many design cues that tell you this is a Samsung device through and through. The power button is in its typical location on the right with the volume buttons on the opposing side, both of which are very meaty and tactile. The home button flanked by capacitive recent apps and back button can be found along the front, along with the usual sensors, front-facing camera, and a very bright notification LED light above the display. The IR blaster and nano SIM slot can be found up top, and the usual 3.5mm headphone jack and single speaker have been shifted to the bottom with the micro USB port sitting squarely in between. The heart rate monitor also makes a return on the rear next to the camera. Speaking of the camera, it does protrude quite a bit from the body of the phone, but this isn't anything new. We've seen plenty of other phones out there with protruding camera lenses, and they've seemed to hold up just fine, and so far the S6 Edge seems to be doing the same. The big elephant in the room with this year's design is the lack of expandable storage, a removable battery, and IP certification, which means it's no longer dust and water resistant like it was on the S5, and some may view this as a step backwards. Some may not even care, and to be honest, some may not even really notice. And Samsung has typically always been about function over form, and some may argue that they've leaned really heavily on the function side of things over the last several years, especially with all the hardware and software features that they've piled onto the devices, like the heart rate monitor, air gestures, and whatever else you can think of. And this year they decided to go with form over function, and it's really going to be up to you to decide whether that premium design is worth those sacrifices. Because as of right now, Samsung seems to think so. The star of the show on the S6 Edge is really the display. It's a 5.1-inch Super AMOLED screen with Quad HD resolution, and at a whopping 577 ppi, this is Samsung's sharpest screen yet. Say what you will about Quad HD, but there's no denying that this screen is gorgeous. Obviously, since it's Super AMOLED, you get all the great characteristics that you come to expect, like deep blacks, high contrast ratios, and saturated colors. The color calibration can still be adjusted further in the settings if the default settings don't quite suit your taste. At 600 nits worth of brightness, the screen is extremely vivid and easy to see in broad daylight, and everything from web browsing, games, and video look absolutely fantastic on it. What sets the S6 Edge apart though, and the reason for its name, is the way the glass spills over onto the sides and disappears into the metal frame. This time around it's on both sides of the display, meaning you don't have to flip it upside down if you're left-handed like on the Note Edge, and no longer are the edges a separate piece either, and instead it is now one single display. These edges bring about some neat software tricks specific to the S6 Edge itself, which we will get into a little later on, but what I really love about the curved edges is the swiping experience. It's extremely smooth and seamless and plays very well with all the slide-out elements found all over Android 5.0. Also, when you're sliding elements in and out from the edges, there's a certain illusion that is created. It appears as if the UI is rolling in from underneath the glass as you swipe inwards and disappearing nicely as you push back outwards. At 5.1 inches, the S6 Edge will still be within the realm of one-handed use for most people, but what I think a lot of people are going to be really curious about is how the S6 Edge feels in the hand. Is it awkward? Is it more difficult to hold? And the answer to those questions is no. It's not any more difficult to hold than a phone with a normal flat display, and even though the edges run all the way down into the metal, the actual display portion doesn't, and what you're actually holding in the hand is metal and bezel, so the screen isn't any more prone to accidental taps or presses than a phone with a regular flat screen. And with the way that Samsung has implemented the features that take advantage of the Edge design, they're actually really difficult to trigger unless you're intentionally trying to do so. It's been a while since we've seen an Exynos powered smartphone from Samsung here in the States, but this year Samsung opted to not go with Qualcomm. For whatever reasons that may be is discussion for another day, but globally the S6 Edge is being powered by Samsung's latest Exynos 7420 and 3GB of RAM. With specs like these and the software optimizations that Samsung has made this year, the S6 Edge is just blazing fast. Samsung has really taken their criticism to heart, and the sluggishness that is typically associated with Samsung devices is not present here. The S6 Edge flies through everything from navigating through the UI, jumping in and out of applications, multitasking, gaming, you name it, the S6 Edge does it all without skipping a beat. The animations throughout the UI have also been cleaned up to make the phone feel just as fast as it should. To show off this new processor even more, Samsung has implemented a double tap on the home button that launches the camera in only 0.7 seconds. Now, all isn't perfect here. There is one glaring hiccup that I noticed, and that had to do with the My Magazine home screen. Swiping over into My Magazine is now faster than ever as Samsung got rid of the slow animation, but when swiping back out of it, you'll have to pause for a second before you can swipe again. It feels as if the My Magazine home screen is not fully integrated into the TouchWiz launcher like how Google Now is with the Google Now launcher or BlinkFeed is on Sense, thus causing the delay. This only occurs if you have My Magazine enabled, but if you don't, you'll never notice it, and since it's software related, Samsung will surely fix it. You should never let one bad apple spoil the bunch, and that's exactly what this is, and judging by the raw power and performance that the Exynos 7420 delivers, there's no reason for Samsung not to stick to their guns. With expandable storage and removable battery gone from the equation, Samsung has done a few things to augment the hardware situation. The Galaxy S6 Edge now starts off with 32GB of storage, with 64 and 128GB options also available. Wireless charging is now natively built in, and Samsung is utilizing a dual charging technology that allows the S6 Edge to work with both WPC and PMA standards. What that means in English is the S6 Edge will work on pretty much any wireless charger you can find, giving you a variety of charging options. The heart rate monitor makes a return but is now in a vertical orientation, and it seems to work more effectively because of it. The fingerprint scanner on the home button has also been improved. It's now a touch and hold type versus the cumbersome swipe method that was used previously, and it's so much faster and easier to use than ever before. As far as speaker quality is concerned, the newly mounted bottom speaker is surprisingly loud for a single speaker and can easily be heard even in loud environments, but it suffers from the same issue that all bottom mounted speakers suffer from. The audio fires sideways and is easily muffled by the hand when in landscape. Regardless, this is still one of the better sounding single firing speakers that Samsung has used as of late. Samsung has also decided to ditch their ISOCELL camera technology in favor of what might be considered a more traditional sensor, but this change is really for the better. It's a 16 megapixel sensor with OIS, which just wasn't possible with ISOCELL, and it features a very wide aperture at f1.9. The camera UI has been cleaned up and simplified, and many users should find it a lot quicker and easier to navigate. You have basic camera settings like filters and HDR mode, which now features an auto mode that takes the guesswork out of when you should use HDR. Camera modes are easily accessible by swiping to the right or tapping the mode button in the bottom right corner. The camera modes have also been slimmed down to just a few like panorama, selective focus, and a pro mode for full manual controls with the option to download more. A new one called Virtual Shot has been added, allowing you to take a full 360-degree view of an object, and it looks really cool on the viewfinder, but it's not something that can easily be shown on social media. The picture quality is the most important, and the camera absolutely delivers. Pictures are super sharp, colorful, and full of detail, and the shutter speed is extremely quick, and more often than not, I got exactly the image I wanted on the first try. The tracking autofocus is a nice touch, especially for moving objects like cars or pets, and the f1.9 aperture gives off a natural bokeh effect that just can't be beaten by fancy software tricks that some cameras out there are trying to compensate with. HDR also works well on this camera to bring out some extra detail. It's not overly aggressive like some other cameras, but sometimes you'll be hard pressed to see much of a difference between the standard shot and the HDR shot. 4K video recording is also possible, and even though video stabilization is disabled in this mode, the built-in OIS prevents the video from becoming overly shaky.
For the record, he's not a crasher.
The camera is also pretty phenomenal in low light, and what I've realized is you can't always trust what you see in the viewfinder. The viewfinder may show a grainy and colorless image, but once you take the photo, it's a completely different result, and that's a testament to how well Samsung's camera software handles post-processing. The low light images may appear slightly muddy in the darker spots of the photos, but the post-processing does a great job of cleaning up the excess noise, providing for an overall sharp looking image, especially at the point of focus. Samsung cameras have always historically been pretty good, but Samsung has definitely raised the bar here, and it's going to be up to other Android manufacturers to keep up. Battery life has been a major area of concern since the announcement of this current generation Galaxy S line, as the battery capacity will be deemed small at 2600 mAh, especially when you take the Quad HD display into account. One thing to be aware of though is the Exynos 7420 features a 14nm process that is much more energy efficient, but the battery life merely just catches up to phones with lower resolution displays. That's not to say that the battery life on the S6 Edge is bad, because this is exactly the type of improvements that we need in order to improve battery life versus just slapping a larger battery into a phone. The S6 Edge will definitely get through a full day of use, and if you're used to charging your phone every night, this won't be an issue, but you shouldn't expect the screen on time to go very far beyond the 4-hour mark. Among the many improvements to the hardware also comes many improvements to the software. The S6 Edge is running on Android 5.0 Lollipop with a completely revamped version of TouchWiz. It's lighter, it's cleaner, and most importantly, it's fast. Samsung finally got rid of all these slow animations like the folders, for example. The settings menu is no longer the convoluted mess it once was, and all the blip and bloop nature sounds that haven't made any sense for the longest time have all been replaced with more simplified click sounds. The color scheme is still pretty much the same as before, but it's more pastel-like in appearance, so it's not quite as in your face, and the beauty of TouchWiz now is that you can theme it. The built-in theme engine allows for a complete UI change from the icons, wallpapers, sounds, native applications, and UI elements like the notification shade. The options right now are pretty bare, but as time goes on, you can expect more themes to be available. Samsung didn't stop there though. There's 40% less bloat over previous versions of TouchWiz, but some staple apps like S Health and S Voice are still present, but S Voice is no longer tied to the home button, and a lot of these apps can easily be disabled or uninstalled. A lot of the gimmicky features like air gestures and toolbox are also gone, but the more useful staple features like multi-window, smart stay, and palm swipe to capture have been kept intact. One of the software features that many probably won't talk about is the keyboard. Samsung's keyboard has been completely redone from the ground up. It's extremely accurate and easy to type on, and it's one of the first keyboards that I've used in a long time that I didn't feel compelled to replace right away with the Google keyboard. In a lot of ways, it's very comparable to the Google keyboard in terms of its accuracy and word prediction, and that really says a lot about how much time Samsung has spent on revitalizing their software. Now, we can't talk about software without mentioning the features that take advantage of the S6 Edge's curved glass. These can be set to be either on the left or right side of the Edge depending on if you're left or right-handed, but the 4 features that Samsung has implemented are Edge Lighting, People Edge, Information Stream, and Night Clock. With Edge Lighting, the edge of the screen will light up when you receive calls or notifications and can be dismissed by simply placing your finger on the heart rate monitor. Also, if the People Edge is enabled, the colors will light up accordingly to what has been assigned to each individual contact. Speaking of the People Edge, this feature allows you to add up to 5 of your favorite contacts that are easily accessible from a swipe on the top portion of the display. From here, you can call or text them, and if you have a missed call or text message from any of your contacts, it'll place additional tabs on the edge of the display so you can easily respond. With Information Stream, this will allow you to view various different streams like Twitter, Yahoo News, and sports scores, for example. Tapping on a stream will take you into its respective application if you want to see more, and you can also download additional streams if you'd like. The implementation, however, is a little bit clunky as you have to swipe quickly back and forth across the edge to activate it, and it just doesn't feel intuitive. The final feature is called Night Clock, and this is pretty self-explanatory. The edge can be used as a night clock, and you can set the hours at night for it to automatically come on so that it's on when you go to bed and off when you wake up in the morning. Some may view these features as gimmicky, and personally I think People Edge and Night Clock are going to be the ones that people use the most, because with a display like this, I don't think very many people are going to want to set their phones face down in order to take advantage of the edge lighting. And like I said, the implementation of the Information Stream is just a little bit clunky and not very intuitive, and I think it would have been better to maybe see a double tap to activate the Information Stream versus the awkward swipe gesture that they have going on right now. But like most Samsung features, these can easily be ignored or completely disabled if you don't want them. But if you really think about it, not utilizing any of these features sort of defeats the purpose of the Edge design. In regards to price, you can expect the Galaxy S6 Edge to be priced at a premium over the S6. So far, only T-Mobile and AT&T have come forward with pricing, with T-Mobile coming in just shy of $780 for the 32GB model, and it only goes up accordingly based on storage. The AT&T version will be available at a starting cost of $815, and we can expect the remaining carriers to be priced similarly. As you may have already seen, the S6 Edge will be available in 4 different colors, which may vary depending on carrier, but with all the different storage options and colors available, users will have plenty of choices to pick from. The Edge has grown up and is no longer the experiment that it was on the Note Edge, and we'll be seeing the S6 Edge being marketed just as heavily as the regular S6, if not more so. The Edge is now one of many parts of Samsung's new identity going forward, and I can't help but think that the S6 was more or less a safety net for Samsung, just in case the Edge doesn't sell. So who knows? Maybe next year we'll be back to one phone and the Edge will be a default feature. As for this year, you'll have to ask yourself the question: to Edge or not to Edge? As for me, I'm going with the Edge. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, please give it a thumbs up down below. We definitely appreciate it. And also subscribe to the channel, which is also down below if you haven't already. And if you want to see more, make sure to check out the links over here on the side. And make sure to stay tuned here to Android Authority, because there's definitely a lot more coverage coming of all the latest flagships, the S6 Edge, the S6, the M9, anything you can think of. We'll be covering it all. And don't forget to check out the website as well for more in-depth coverage, because we are your source for all things Android.